Hello,
Hello.
and welcome to this Prolifiko webinar. And today we are going to show you how to stop waiting for the perfect, whatever it's the perfect time, the perfect idea, the perfect moment to write, and get writing instead. And we're going to give you some really practical things that you can do to stop you procrastinating and start you writing. And if you're watching us live, feel free, we've got some questions. If you've got a notepad and pen, make a note, or what would be even better is pop a comment onto the chat. And if you're watching this live, we're able to respond, and if you're watching it recorded, this is going to go up on YouTube and it'll be on all our socials, and we'd love to hear what you think, so feel free to add a comment. If you haven't met us before, we are Prolifiko. My name's Bec and this is Chris.
Hello.
And we help writers become more productive. And that's exactly what this webinar is going to do. We're going to be talking for about 20 to 25 minutes. And there's lots of things that you can get involved in and lots of exercises. So let's get cracking and find out what we're going to be doing today. So these are some of the things that we're going to cover. First up, what you're going to take away. We're going to talk a bit about procrastination and delay, the things that are holding you back. And that's why you make excuses. And that's what we're going to dig into a little bit more deeply. And that's going to give you some really helpful mental models that means you can tackle those unhelpful thought processes. And the benefit of this is it stops you feeling guilty about your writing and you start feeling positive instead. So, and we're going to finish up with 5 really, really practical tips for writing success. So let's dive in. First up, we're going to talk a bit about procrastination. So procrastination is one of the things that makes us delay with our writing. And there's this really good quote that we like from Professor Robert Boyce. He is the kind of master of research into writing productivity. And I'm just going to read this out for you because it's really, really helpful. The act of putting off a difficult, delayable, important task, an act with distant, perhaps doubtful rewards, as in writing, in favour of something easier, quicker, and less anxiety-provoking. So what I really like about this definition is that procrastination is normal. It's your brain protecting you from stress, from anxiety, from hard things. So writing is fundamentally quite a difficult thing to do, particularly if you're working on a difficult research project or a long-form piece of work like a novel or a script. It's difficult. So what your procrastination is doing is protecting you from that difficulty by getting you to do something easier. Now, often when we think about procrastination, we think of the really frivolous stuff. We think about spending time on social media, scrolling through Instagram, watching videos on YouTube. Those are all forms of procrastination, but actually procrastination is a lot more complicated than that because it can be any task that's easier than the one you set out to do. So you can often procrastinate doing tasks that are writing. So for example, I have a real tendency to spend more time doing research, thinking I need to know more before I can start writing. I end up doing a lot of time planning, and actually that's making me delay with my projects. So what we're going to do now is look at a bit of some of these types of procrastination and the really practical stuff that you can do right now to overcome those procrastination and delaying tactics. And as I said before, please feel free to make a comment. If you've got any questions, post them in the chat. We would love to hear from you.
So the first step towards combating procrastination is to start to notice the kind of excuses that you typically make to yourself and to others when you instead of doing the writing, and it's a really powerful. Just simply noticing these excuses is a really, really powerful way to start combating them. But most importantly, when you do notice and when you do start understanding what it is that you how you make these excuses around the writing, that you do so without judgment. So you acknowledge these excuses, and then you you do so without judgment. It's not an opportunity for you to feel bad by doing this kind of exercise. It's a very simple method. So what are the kind of things that people make excuses around? Well, as Bec said, one of the things that people often feel is that they're not prepared. They feel that they always have to do some more research or some more planning before they get to the writing. So an excuse being, once I feel fully prepared, then I'll start to write. Then I'll get down to the writing. Busyness, things getting in the way, is also another thing that people make a lot of excuses around. I'm too busy now, but things will quieten down tomorrow, next week, next year, next month. Finding the perfect idea is another excuse that lots of people use to delay the writing. Once I've found that idea, then I'll start. And that's something that really holds people back, trying to find that perfect idea. Also, people's circumstances give people a route to make excuses too. So I'll get distracted, I'll get interrupted today, but tomorrow or next week I'll be better. It'll be quieter then. And also tiredness and exhaustion. Once I'm feeling less tired, then I'll get back to work. But we find that these excuses tend to have kind of three things in common. First of all, they feel legitimate, and that's because they could be legitimate, and that's why you believe them. They have like a grain of truth in them, which means that they sound reasonable, which means that you believe them. So that's the first thing that they all have in common. Secondly, they contain an overly rosy or overly optimistic view of the future, which is why you want to believe them. We want to believe that stuff will ease up in the future. We want to believe that we'll have more time. We want to believe that we'll find the perfect idea, which is why, again, these kind of excuses have such a powerful hold over us. But they all result in delay, and they all result in inaction. And often, from what we find when we talk to writers and coach writers, this can cause an awful lot of anxiety, and it's an anxiety that can last for years, this searching for the perfect time, the perfect idea. So I don't know whether if you got the email that we sent you yesterday. We asked what are you waiting for? What are the kind of excuses that you typically tell yourself and others about your writing? Why are you waiting? Why are you delaying? Is it because you need to do more? Is it because you feel you need to do more preparation and more research? Is it because you feel you don't have enough time right now? Is it because you feel that you're too busy? Or do you feel that you're too tired? Just have a think about this, or pop any excuses that you have and tell us now.
Okay, so we're on to the second area, and this is all about identifying what beliefs hold you back and turning those unhelpful conclusions into helpful ones. So just as Chris said, we've spotted some of the excuses we make. So what we're going to try and do is do something with them once we've noticed them. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. So the first one, this belief that some of us have, this may be familiar to you, is I'm not ready to write. I need to do more research. And having that belief leads us to these really unhelpful conclusions. So I'll wait until I'm ready. What you can do is, rather than follow that unhelpful conclusion, make it helpful and admit, yeah, things aren't perfect, but I can still do something. Okay, let's look at another one of these beliefs. So the time's not right. I'm too busy. I'm too tired. The writing's not going to happen. And that leads us to this unhelpful conclusion. Well, I'm just going to put off writing until another time. But the more helpful conclusion is, yes, I'm tired, I'm busy, but there might be something small I can do. And that's what we really want you to think about, is when you notice these beliefs, these excuses you make, think about how you can turn them into something helpful instead, rather than always assuming it's going to be negative and you can't write. How can you make that contribute to your writing progress?
Okay, on to step number 3, or point number 3, and this is all about challenging the conclusions that you reach. So it's the third step, basically, to combating procrastination, which is to ask yourself for evidence. Now, I'm going to say something that you might find quite surprising, and that is that your excuses might not actually be excuses. Sometimes waiting and delaying can be the best option. Shock horror. Tomorrow might be a better time to start. Next week might be a better time to start. You might need to do more research and more planning. You might need to read another 2 articles before continuing. You might be too busy right now. Next week, next month, next year could be better. But the key is not to assume, rather get the facts, compile the facts. Again, in our coaching, too many people spend too much time feeling guilty about their writing, but you'll only know whether waiting and delaying is the best option for you by asking yourself for evidence, for asking yourself for the facts. If you think it's better to delay, ask yourself what evidence you have to reach that conclusion. Just don't accept it. Don't assume that you're necessarily correct. If you believe that you'll be less busy in the future, if you believe that next week will be a far better time to start the writing, prove it to yourself. But do so based on what has happened in the past, how you have managed your time in the past. Is it really accurate? Is it really true that you'll have more time next week and next month? There's actually a number of blogs that we've written around this area. It's called the planning fallacy, the whole idea that we're often over optimistic in terms of what we think we can do, and the best way to actually manage that time, the best way to manage that process, is to base your decisions on what's happened in the past rather than what you think will happen or what you hope will happen in the future. When you think you can't move on, when you think you have to nail that second paragraph before you move on to the third, ask yourself, is that really the case? So, again, our question to you: how could you challenge those assumptions that you reach about your writing and about the time that you have? If you think you'll have more time next week, what evidence could you collect, compile to prove it? How could you prove to yourself that tomorrow really will be better than today? So again, have a think or pop your comments in the box.
Okay, so we are on to the fourth tip here, and I'm going to do the next two back to back. But before I do that, a very quick recap. So we've just run through 3 tips, and the first one is all about noticing the excuses that you make. And once you've done that, you can start to turn the negative conclusions that you bring from those beliefs into positive ones that help you make progress with your writing. And then Chris's last tip was really about kind of powering that up. So we're moving just away from just thinking about what we can do to gathering evidence. So giving yourself some data, something that can prove whether or not you can make progress, or whether or not you do need to, the excuses are really genuine and you are too tired and too busy. So I'm going to step that up another level with tip 4, which is around test. So don't assume you can't do something until you've tried. So I think this is really important in terms of mindset. And we work a lot with the people we coach, and when we run workshops, we talk a lot about this kind of like experimental mindset. And as much as we like to think that we're the best judge of ourselves and our own ideas, it really helps to gather evidence and to test it out. So what we want you to do is conduct an experiment on yourself. Don't accept your assumptions, test them. So let's give a couple of examples. If you're feeling too tired, rather than just abandon writing, why not write for a short amount of time, just for 10 minutes? When 10 minutes is up, you see how you feel. What you've done is you've run an experiment and then you evaluate the results. So if you're too tired, then you can't write. It's fine. Stop feeling bad about it. Go on and have a nap. If you can write, do another 10 minutes. Who knows, you might have kind of re-engaged your creative energy. The same if you feel you can't write without more planning and research. So rather than just say, oh, I can't write yet, why don't you try something small? Try and write for a little bit. Try and do an outline, because that will help you figure out what bits and where you need to go and do some more research. The important thing is don't assume, experiment instead. And when we talk about this, what we're trying to say is that testing isn't about, making shortcuts, and it's definitely not about forcing yourself to write when you are too tired or too busy. It's about figuring out whether your assumptions are true. So this is so important to get out of having a negative mindset, because if you feel that you're always too tired and you can't write, for example, when you don't write, you feel guilty that you haven't written, but actually you might need to figure out whether you are too tired, and then you stop feeling bad about it. Stop feeling guilty, start feeling good about when you can write instead. And that's so much behind what we do. So our question back to you is, when you come up with one of these assumptions, one of these excuses, run a test. How could you test whether your assumptions are true or not? Okay, we are on to our final piece of advice for today. And this is to encourage, support, and never criticize. We want to finish on a really positive note here, and we want you to be kind to yourself. Because when we're establishing writing routines and when we're taking on these big tasks, the sorts of big tasks that cause us to procrastinate, we want to associate good things about them, because when we feel good about stuff, we're more likely to do it. And at first we might be trying to persuade ourselves that it is good and it is enjoyable, so we might need to bribe and reward ourselves. But starting to feel good about your writing means you're more likely to continue. So the more you blame yourself, the more demotivated you'll feel. So we want you to stop that negative cycle. If you have excuses, figure out what's going on there. Don't just feel bad and berate yourself for it, because it's natural to have excuses when you're doing something like writing. So this is our kind of question for you at the end, is if a friend came to you feeling negative about their writing or their work, how would you respond? So imagine you are your own best friend. What advice would you give yourself? How would you treat yourself? You probably wouldn't be anywhere near as mean as you are to yourself. So we want you, when it comes to your writing, to be your own best friend. Give yourself the encouragement, the support you need to keep going.
So, 5 tips to take away, 5 things to take away from this, and hopefully remember and apply into your own practice. Number 1, noticing seems simple, but it's a really, really powerful technique to combat procrastination, to identify the kind of excuses that you make, but make sure when you do notice how you make excuses, that you do so, you acknowledge and accept, but do so without judgment. It's a really, really powerful way to start combating procrastination. So please, if I can say it, so please do give that a go. Number 2, turn unhelpful conclusions into helpful ones. Rather than waiting to start and delaying the task, do something small. Remember those tips that Bec talked about in terms of it's that subtle kind of change in mindset, which means that you can just start doing one thing rather than one small thing, rather than delaying. Number 3, challenge the assumptions that you reach. Why will tomorrow be better to start than today? Prove it to yourself. Ask yourself for the evidence. It's really, really important also as a way to stop feeling guilty about your writing as well, to establish whether you can or can't do it and move on and accept. Number 4, Bec's point, run experiments to test your conclusions. Don't assume that you can't do anything until you've tried to do it first. And number 5, if you're feeling down about your writing, be your own best friend. Kind of goes right back to the point I made at the beginning, which is it's not about making you feel bad. It's about just being your own best friend and accepting your life as it is. So that's it. There's just one more thing before we go. I just wanted to mention our new Kickstart Your Writing course, which starts in January. It's a really, really great course that takes place over 4 weeks. Starts on January the 15th. And if you like this webinar, we're really, really convinced that you will love our 4-week course. It's all about helping you to start writing in your life as it is, with all the distractions and other things that are going on, and not waiting for a perfect time to get writing, but taking a really practical and pragmatic approach to your writing. We help you supercharge a piece of writing over a period of 4 weeks. Week by week, we give you lots of different assignments and exercises and tips to help you do things like tackle your self-doubt, become more confident, become a more consistent writer. As I say, weekly assignments and practical tips every week, and as well you get webinars with us, like similar to this, with live Q&As and support all across that month as well. And the best thing is, at the moment, we're offering this plan half price with our code New Year 50, but only for 1 more week. And as I might have said at the beginning, we run the Kickstart course probably only a couple of times a year. So if you want to get started, do sign up for this particular course. Details on our website, prolifiko.com. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found it useful. And again, do join us on the course, the Kickstart course, if that's of interest, and use the 50% off code. But that's it for now.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time.
Bye.
Bye.